A man's life always turns on a silent moment. The moment he realizes the power draining from him isn't fate, isn't bad luck, isn't the world plotting against him. It's something simpler, more primal, hidden in plain sight. A force he gives away without thinking. A force that could have built an empire inside his chest, if only he had held it for one more second. Hold on, before we unlock the real power of semen retention. Hit that subscribe button and join our Telegram channel. Link in description. We drop daily wisdom, success tools, and energy secrets only shared there. Don't watch from the sidelines. Become part of the movement. Every transformation begins with a whisper in the dark. A question the mind tries to ignore. What if the energy slipping away every night could have been the fuel for destiny? What if everything he ever wanted, clarity, discipline, wealth, magnetism, was never outside of him, but leaking from him? Something ancient stirs inside the man who asks that question. A tension, a pulse, a pressure that feels dangerous, electrifying, almost supernatural. It's not lust, it's not desire. It's the start of awakening. This is where semen retention stops being a practice and becomes a story of power. A thriller unfolding inside a body that was asleep for too long. A man standing at the edge of a new identity, knowing that one choice decides everything: release or rise. The first thing he notices is silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of mental noise. Thoughts stop running like hunted animals. The mind becomes a locked vault. A vault holding energy too valuable to waste. The suspense builds day after day, as if something behind the ribs prepares to break free. By day 4, something shifts. He feels watched, not by the world, but by his own potential. The version of him that always existed but never had the power. The version waiting, tapping its foot, saying, finally. By day 7, the pressure becomes a character of its own. A shadow companion, not an enemy, not a friend. A force testing him. A force checking if he deserves to level up. By day 10, the game changes. Random sparks of confidence ignite out of nowhere. He wakes with purpose. He speaks differently. He walks like a man hiding fire under his skin. The suspense of when will this energy burst becomes intoxicating. He realizes something unsettling, something thrilling, something true. If he can hold this energy long enough, it will stop attacking him and start working for him. It will stop being tension and start being fuel. This is where the story begins, not with deprivation, not with denial, but with transmutation. The energy once destined to leave the body now coils like a living serpent at the base of the spine, waiting to rise. Many never feel this rise because they never endure the tension long enough. The first attempt breaks them. Pressure scares them. The urges trick them. But for the few who endure, something extraordinary happens. The energy moves. It doesn't ask permission. It climbs. It strengthens the mind. It sharpens intuition and illuminates impulses and motives, the way lightning exposes a battlefield. Suddenly, the world looks different. Colors sharpen. Sensations intensify. Focus becomes lethal. Distractions burn away like fog in sunlight. Retention is not about suppressing desire. It's about mastering it, channeling it, force-feeding it into your purpose until your purpose becomes unavoidable. Desire used to control the man. Now, the man controls desire. And this shift unlocks the first secret. You were never powerless. You were just drained. Everything inside you, creativity, ambition, dominance, calmness. Calmness was running on low battery because you were leaking your ultimate power source. Retention plugs the leak. Transformation begins. The energy that used to scatter now concentrates like a laser. Projects finish faster. Goals that once felt heavy now feel like stepping stones. People feel your presence before you speak. Doors open because your energy demands it. There is suspense in this new life. The suspense of waiting to see who you become next. The suspense of realizing you have more power than you ever imagined. But the real turning point arrives when the energy resides beyond the body. When it stops being physical and becomes spiritual. The ancient traditions were right. The energy stored becomes awareness. The awareness becomes insight. The insight becomes awakening. The root center ignites first. A surge of raw vitality. Then the creative center. Sparks of ideas, breakthroughs, visions. Then the center of willpower. Suddenly, you are unstoppable. Then the heart. Emotions stabilize. Gratitude grows. Then the mind. Clarity sharpens to a blade. And finally, the quiet explosion of intuition and inner knowing. The man who reaches this point is no longer chasing anything in life. He attracts, he pulls, he influences, he leads. The suspense is no longer fear-based. It becomes excitement, anticipation, the thrill of becoming something he never believed he could be. Retention becomes the turning of an internal key. The unlocking of doors he never knew existed. The beginning of a hero arc that was always waiting for him. The mind becomes calmer. The body becomes stronger. The spirit becomes louder. And the old self, the restless, compulsive, distracted, Zen fades like smoke. There's a moment every man practicing retention feels. A moment of absolute stillness. A moment where the world cannot touch him. A moment where he knows, I am not the man I used to be. That moment is worth the struggle, worth the urges, worth the discomfort, worth the early chaos, because on the other side of discipline lies power that cannot be faked, purchased, or imitated. This is not just self-control. This is self-ascension, a slow-burn journey into the highest version of yourself. Retention is the dark tunnel before the sunrise, the storm before the awakening, the suspense before the breakthrough. And once you cross the threshold, life bends around you. People feel something different. Opportunities gravitate toward you. Your presence radiates unspoken authority, because you are no longer governed by impulse. You govern energy itself. You become the man who holds his power, builds his power, and becomes his power. By the time your energy fully reaches, the world cannot ignore you, because you finally stopped ignoring yourself. And that is the true miracle of semen retention. It gives a man back to himself. This is true power of your seed. The journey begins in a moment that rarely looks dramatic on the outside. It doesn't arrive with thunder, lightning, or some heroic soundtrack playing behind a man's shoulder. It usually starts quietly. A stillness, a flicker of self-awareness, a realization that the life he is living no longer matches the life he knows he could be living. This moment is subtle, soft, almost forgettable, yet it carries the potential to rewrite a man's destiny. Because every transformation starts not with noise, but with an internal shift that whispers, you were made for more. For years, the modern world has pulled men in 1,000 different directions. Distractions glow from every angle. Temptations rise with every click. And the dopamine-driven culture keeps men trapped in cycles that drain them from the inside out. Energy feels low. Focus collapses. Confidence fades. A man begins to wonder whether the fire he once felt is permanently gone or simply buried under layers of habits he never consciously chose. Deep down, he knows something has been slipping. Not because he is weak, but because the world has become engineered to weaken him. He feels it when he wakes up groggy and unmotivated. He feels it when his ambition fades into the background of endless scrolling. He feels it when his internal drive once powerful, natural, instinctive turns into a faint memory. The truth is harsh but simple. The modern world drains the very life force that once made men powerful. But there comes a day when a man stops running. He stops hiding from his potential, stops numbing himself with pleasure, stops trading long-term power for short-term relief. There comes a day when he looks at himself in the mirror and sees not the man he is, but the man he could become. It is in this moment that the idea of retaining his energy, his essence, his semen, becomes more than a concept. It becomes a gateway. Semen retention is not about suppression. It is not about moral purity or old philosophies trying to control desire. It is about reclaiming life force. It is about recognizing that the energy a man carries is sacred, potent, and magnetic. This energy builds worlds. This energy fuels creation. This energy shapes empires. And when he holds it within, when he protects it, when he chooses discipline over indulgence, something extraordinary begins to happen inside him. The first shift is physical. His body starts storing what it once wasted. A brightness returns to his eyes. His face looks firmer, more defined, more alive. His posture improves with no conscious effort. There is a charge under his skin, a current running through his veins, like he has reconnected to a power supply he never knew he had. This is not magic. This is biology operating at full capacity. The second shift is mental. Fog begins to lift. Thoughts sharpen. Focus strengthens. Tasks that once felt overwhelming now feel manageable. Ambition resurfaces like a tidal wave. A clarity emerges, allowing him to see opportunities he once ignored. His brain stops chasing constant pleasure and instead begins craving progress, challenge, and purpose. He becomes less reactive, more intentional, more strategic. The third shift is emotional. Calmness settles into his chest. Stress reduces. Anxiety loses its grip. His mood stabilizes, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because he becomes harder to shake. His inner world becomes grounded, rooted, deeply centered. He starts feeling like a man who can weather any storm. And then comes a shift that surprises him the most. People notice. Women sense something different before he says a word. There is a presence about him, a quiet confidence, an aura that cannot be faked. When he walks into a room, he feels like gravity. Not loud, not flashy, not desperate, simply magnetic. Men respect him. Women are drawn to him. Opportunities gravitate toward him. This is the return of masculine polarity. a force that had been suffocated by the noise of digital addiction. But this transformation is not automatic. Semen retention is not a magic switch. It is a commitment, a discipline, a choice that must be made again and again, especially on days when temptation feels overpowering. The early days are the hardest. Habits resist being broken. The old self fights to stay alive. The mind whispers, excuses, logical justifications, and false comfort. But if a man holds the line, if he endures the discomfort or breakthrough occurs, what emerges is a version of him that is sharper mentally, stronger emotionally, and more powerful energetically. This transformation is not merely symbolic. It is biochemical, psychological, and spiritual all at once. His testosterone resets, his dopamine pathways heal, his confidence rebuilds, his intuition becomes louder, his decision-making becomes cleaner. He begins to feel aligned with his purpose, not drifting through life in search of empty stimulation. The world begins to react differently to a man who is aligned with his core. His presence becomes undeniable. His voice becomes steady and grounded. His words carry weight. His boundaries become clearer. The people around him treat him differently because they can feel the strength he carries within. This strength is not arrogance. It is not aggression. It is certainty. A man who retains his energy becomes a man who is harder to manipulate, harder to distract, harder to derail. He becomes someone who cannot be easily controlled by desire. This freedom is rare in a world that profits from addiction. This power is dangerous to a culture built on constant consumption. And that is precisely why it is so transformative. Semen retention is not about running from pleasure forever. It is about breaking the chains of compulsion. It is about choosing when and where to give your energy. It is about transforming desire into drive, lust into leadership, passion into purpose. It is about turning the same biological force that creates life into the fuel that builds your own life. Once a man crosses a certain threshold, something profound happens. Retention stops feeling like a challenge and starts feeling like a lifestyle. He becomes addicted, not to pleasure, but to progress. Not to climax, but to clarity. Not to distraction, but to destiny. Every day he holds his energy becomes a vote for the man he is becoming. He starts to wake up earlier. He begins planning with intention. His workouts become more intense, more focused, more rewarding. His mind feels like a powerful engine finally running on premium fuel. He stops chasing validation because he becomes his own source of confidence. He stops overthinking because his mind becomes anchored. He stops settling because he finally realizes his worth. But the true power of semen retention lies not in the benefits, but in the identity shift it creates. A man begins to see himself differently. He begins to respect himself. He begins to trust himself. Self-respect becomes his armor. Self-discipline becomes his weapon. Self-control becomes his strategy. When a man learns to control his urges, he learns to control his life. This discipline spreads into every area of his world. His relationships improve, not because he becomes distant, but because he becomes present. He communicates more clearly. He holds his boundaries. He stops tolerating disrespect. He becomes selective, intentional, discerning. Professionally, he becomes unstoppable. His productivity increases. His ability to focus deepens. His creativity expands. He begins thinking bigger, moving faster, achieving more. His work ethic becomes relentless, not from stress, but from alignment. Spiritually, he feels connected again. Not necessarily in a religious way, but in an energetic way. He feels a sense of purpose, a calling, an inner fire guiding him toward something meaningful. He stops wandering in circles and begins walking in a direction. And as the weeks turn into months, he realizes that semen retention was never about holding something physical. It was about unlocking something internal. It was about awakening the dormant king within him. It was about reclaiming the energy that makes him powerful, magnetic, creative, and unstoppable. This path is not easy, because greatness is not easy. But every challenge, every urge, every moment of restraint becomes a brick in the foundation of his new identity. He becomes the builder of his life, not the prisoner of his habits. If this video gave you real value, tap the thanks button. Your support helps me keep creating deeper content like this. Every thanks is a spark that keeps this mission alive. Your support means more than you know. And then comes the moment he looks back and realizes how far he has come. He sees the old version of himself, the tired version, the distracted version, the weakened version, and he no longer recognizes that man. He feels gratitude for him, but he knows he will never return to that state. Because once a man tastes the power of his own potential, nothing less satisfies him. He becomes a force of nature, unshakable, focused, magnetic, purpose-driven, alive. The world may not understand his transformation, but it feels it. This is the rebirth of masculine energy. This is the forging of inner strength. This is the awakening of a man who finally realizes his worth.